Charles Foster Kane!
I run a couple of newspapers.
You just want to persuade people that you love them so much that they ought to love you back.
Don't miss the 80th anniversary of Citizen Kane returning to cinemas for a limited engagement, featuring exclusive insights from Ben Mankiewicz.
There's only one person in the world to decide what I'm going to do, and that's me.
Own it now on digital and Blu-ray, and for more information, visit fathomevents.com.
Hi, everyone. Vegas Film Critic here, Jeffrey Gay Howard, here to give you a programming note of Citizen Kane's 80th anniversary screening presentation brought to you by Fathom Events and Turner Classic Movies. Widely considered the greatest film of all time, I would certainly agree with that. It's the story of Charles Foster Kane, who is a publisher, and he dies uttering his final word, Rosebud. And it sets into a chain of events of a reporter trying to figure out what was this publishing magnate's last word. What was the meaning for it? So we go through this entire movie of Citizen Kane with his backstory, with his power struggles, his love life. It's just one of the most amazing films ever made. And Turner Classic Movies and Fathom Events are bringing it to the big screen, which is how it should be seen if you're watching it for the first time, on September 19th and 22nd. So you have two chances to see this movie on the big screen. Just head on over to Fathom Events, and it'll give you all the local places local theaters where they are playing Citizen Kane. And I remember when I saw Citizen Kane, I was kind of older because it is a sophisticated movie, but it's just an amazing film from Orson Welles, who was so young at the time. And a lot of people think he peaked with his very first movie. So it's just a masterpiece, and also some of the most amazing cinematic techniques with deep focus and the cinematography. And it is just an amazing film. So it's widely considered the greatest film of all time. Now Vertigo, I guess, has replaced that, which I totally disagree. It's not even my top 10 of Hitchcock films. So I still think Citizen Kane is probably the greatest film ever made, but I don't know. Watching Lawrence of Arabia lately, it's almost got me. But you know what? That's another story. Also, I had the great pleasure of talking to Turner Classic Movie host Ben Mankiewicz, whose grandfather was the screenwriter for Citizen Kane. And I had the chance to ask him about one of the most famous cinematic props in movie history, the sled used in Citizen Kane. There were 4 made. Did his grandfather own one? Take a listen. Ben, Jeff in Vegas, man, good to see you.
Oh, good to see you too.
You know, I want to talk about the sled, which is the holy grail of movie props. 4 existed, 2 burned in the film. Spielberg paid for one, 60 grand in 1982. And when Debbie Reynolds opened up her hotel here in Las Vegas, I remember vividly seeing all her collection, saving MGM, all the props, everything. I saw the sled on display there in 1995. I had no idea that it was on loan and owned by your grandfather. So what is your experience with the sled in your lifetime?
So that sled, I believe the one, because as you said there were 4, right? Right. That's the story, right? There were 4. And, but the one that was there, if it was the one indeed, then I've heard the same thing my grandfather was long dead. So it was owned by my uncle Don, my father's brother, my grandfather's oldest son. And Don had been given at the wrap party, Ben Hecht gave Herman a sled, and Hecht had it made, I presume by exactly the same as the ones that had been used in the movie. So I don't know whether that's one of the 4, but it's one of the reasons why when it ultimately sold, it sold for a little bit less money, and his son ultimately sold it at auction sometime my cousin John, in the last, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. So what was the question specifically?
What's your experience with the sled? Yeah. Did you ever experience the sled?
Yeah. So I never used it to, sled, in case that's what the question is. I never went down a mountain on it. In December,
did you touch it? Did you see it in person?
Yeah, no, I did. Yeah. So that one, the only one I ever saw was that one. And that was the story of that sled. Whether that story is fully correct or not, I don't know. But that sled said Rosebud, and there it was given again. And to me, that makes it better. Forget that it was the one made by the prop department that wasn't burned. The notion that Ben Hecht gave it to Herman at a party, sort of to celebrate the movie, that's to me a better story. But it ended up not going for the, what you would imagine a Rosebud. So if you had an original Rosebud sled, what that would be worth to somebody now, I can't seems like somebody would pay certainly hundreds of thousands of dollars for that. So, I mean, and my father had the Oscar for years. And after my parents divorced, it was with him and his place and with his wife, Patricia, in DC. And then he put it it was so much to insure that he put it in a safe deposit box. And then he thought, well, it's in a safe deposit box. And somebody else in the family needed some money. And my dad, who owned it completely, but he sold the Sled at auction. He sold the Oscar at auction so he could give some of the money to somebody who needed money. My dad was very generous and he didn't care about money, and he would always help people, which Herman's true. Herman too, was always borrowing money and lending it simultaneously. And in fact, that's part of, you see a little bit of that in Mank in Fincher's movie. So I wish obviously that we still had the Oscar, because I'd have it now. I mean, my brother and I would, I'm sure, co-own it, but I'd keep it. But I get it. But I love that my dad sold it because it was too much to insure and he had to put it in a safe deposit box. So what's the point? And he would always think, but his hope was that Spielberg would buy it, because Spielberg bought the Herman's copy of the screenplay with Herman's notes on it. And so the theory was, we'll sell the Oscar and Spielberg will buy that too. And that's like giving it to a museum, right? But so we don't know who bought it. We don't know who bought the Oscar, and it didn't go for as much money as anybody had hoped. Whereas now, of course, I can't imagine that Herman's Oscar for Citizen Kane, and because it's one of the last Oscars you could sell. But obviously, I wish it was still in the family. But the Sled, yeah, I saw and I touched, but it's and of course I wish we had it, but I don't know, man. It's a slippery slope of memorabilia, and I'm overwhelmed with the number of things that we have, none of which is worth any money, but all these letters. I have great letters that Ben Hecht wrote to people like Ben Hecht, wrote to my grandfather after my grandfather died, who wrote to my grandmother after my grandfather died. And, it's I love having that stuff, but I don't know why. It feels like it would be okay not to have that. I should probably give it to somebody, probably give it to the Academy Museum, see if they can do anything with it.